Hey, Practice Bobsy. Dr. D'Angelo Webster here with a great interview with my friend Dr. Darren Anderson. And he is a friend of mine who, when I heard his unique path to ownership, I really wanted to share it with everyone because I felt like it could motivate a lot of people or at least share like a different way of looking at things in terms of starting practice. I'm going to let Darren get into introducing himself in a little bit, but just a little background. He has a startup practice in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's in Scottsdale, right? Yep, Scottsdale, Arizona, which is not a cheap spot. Okay, it's a pretty nice area. And he was able to get into this startup. I believe the all-in cost was around $50,000. Is that right, Darren?
Yeah, I was looking at my numbers yesterday because I wanted to be ready. It came out to be so on day one I was in it 52,000, just over 52,000.
52,000 on day one. Okay, and there's a big misconception, and that's why I really wanted to bring on Darren. That if you go cheap, like he started practice for 50,000, it must be like really run down, and he must have cut corners on a ton of stuff. So if you guys look over to the screen, Darren, you can't see this, but the viewers will be able to see it. These are some pictures inside of Darren's office. This place is beautiful. Okay, so I'm just scrolling to the side. These are the pictures. This is an amazing looking office. If you look at the decor, okay, 50,000 all in. Like there's a couple things that I noticed in the design where I can bet he probably saved some money, but they're really smart ways to save money. Okay, so again, this is a great picture here. So Darren, I'm going to let you get into it. Go ahead and talk a little bit about your story, how you got into this, why Scottsdale, why this specific location, why a startup versus buying an old practice. Let's
Yeah.
get into it.
So I graduated 3 years ago, and I was probably I think I was like the third oldest student in my class. So I graduated when I was 42 years old,
Wow.
and I had a little bit of buyer's remorse after seeing the student loan debt and everything, and I kind of felt like other dentists that are my age have been in practice for almost 20 years. Their loans are almost paid off and they're just kind of cruising along. And here I am, just starting out. I already have a lot of debt and I want to be retired in 20 more years, And so for me to add another 500,000, $1 million of debt at my age just didn't seem uh, it just wasn't to me a great idea, and I didn't want to be paying on that loan for another 10, 15 years and then only have 5 or 10 years to really make a lot of money
Right.
when right now I should be saving away my nest egg, not paying a bunch of loans
Paying
back.
off paying off another 500,000 on the practice.
Exactly. And so for me it just wasn't an option, so I was either going to start a practice with cash, or I was going to work as an associate the rest of my life,
Hmm.
And the last 3 years, I really wasn't enjoying dentistry that much. Working as an associate, I was stressed out all the time, and so then I wasn't sure if I could do that either. And so I
Hmm.
felt like ownership was my only option. I was a business owner prior to dental school, and I loved just being my own boss. And so I just knew that that was the path that I was going to do. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to open a practice for the price that I wanted to. I remember, so the location that I'm in right now was not my first location that I chose. There was another location that I was negotiating that had much better demographics. So the
Hmm.
original place, it had, I think it was great. It was like it was 5,000 people to one dentist, and
Right.
it was a
So an
small
awesome
town. It
ratio.
had really high. I mean, the household income was like around $90,000, um, but the space just was not ideal, and the negotiations fell through. And then um, I happened to be on Craigslist, and I was looking for used equipment, and this
Hmm.
space came up, and it was in Scottsdale. And at first I was like, there's no way I'm starting a practice in Scottsdale. When I looked at the demographics around
Hmm.
this area, there was literally 260 dentists in Scottsdale, and there was 150 dentists within a 3 mile radius
Hmm.
of my location.
But then
So
you picked up on the lean approach. If you save enough money, it doesn't matter
it
in a
doesn't
lot of
really
ways.
matter. Yes, and so um, that scared me because I was like, I'm going to be competing with everyone here. And so I don't know how realistic it is, but I was like, well, I'm just going to go look at the space and see what I think. And so I walked into the space and it was perfect. It's exactly what I wanted. Um, I wanted something very small, very conservative. I had no interest in a large practice. I really wanted, as my practice name is, boutique, I really wanted a very small boutique practice that I could keep really lean, and
Hmm.
this just kind of fit the bill.
Yeah.
And so I took my wife in there and showed her around, and she was like, "Yeah, I get a great vibe. Uh, so let's do it." So I negotiated my own lease. It was probably one of the most stressful times
Hmm.
in my life I can think of, and not necessarily the negotiating, but actually just finally pulling the trigger. I just remember how stressed out I was for
Yeah.
like that first two or
Jumping
three
out of the
months.
plane, like finally
Jumping,
saying like I've been an associate, I haven't been super happy. I've always wanted to be an owner. But
yeah,
you go back and forth. Like you kind of went back and forth
you
for a
do,
couple years, and then
and it would have,
you're in.
yeah. And I tell you what, it would have been very easy to talk myself out of it,
Hmm.
just because I've owned a business before, but I've never run a dental practice, and so I wasn't sure if I could do it or not.
Yeah.
And so when I came into the space, I looked at it and I just figured, okay, I think I can do most of this on my own. So it always ended up taking much longer than I anticipated. Um, but yeah, and then one of the other things too for me is that when I first graduated and started working as an associate in a lot of these, I basically worked all DSOs after I
Yeah.
graduated. And when I first graduated, I thought about, I wanted to be the super dentist. I wanted to do all the specialty procedures. I wanted to do thermal extractions. I even took a year-long course in implant placement. And once working with these DSOs, I found out I hated doing all that stuff.
Hmm.
And,
Yeah.
and I was always going home stressed out. Um, my wife could tell I was always stressed out. I never felt great about the dentistry I was doing. And so for me, my goal was I want to see if I can create a practice where I only have to do the procedures I want to do. I can work as much or as little as I want, you know,
Hmm.
and I want to be mentally healthy for the next 20 years.
Yep.
That was the only option.
And
And
there's so many layers to what you're talking about because at first level you say, well, you could say I'm an employee dentist. When I'm the boss, I'm not going to have to do all these things I don't want to do. I'm going to be able to do a ton if I want to, but also just take it easy and relax and come home happy at the end of the day if I want to.
you know,
But if you've got $1 million loan to pay off, that potentially could change that stress level balance. And you
yeah,
found the happy medium with the lean approach, which is practice biopsy is all about. You're like a shining example. If you keep your bills low enough, you can really, really just take things as easy as you want to if you want to. I know on your website you've got a really interesting approach that I want you to talk about a little bit. I'm
yeah,
just going to basically read it. So, um, on Darren's website, it says we're a small boutique style dental office that fosters close, trusting relationships. We maintain a small office. Like dentistry in the past, we provide undivided care approach, meaning that unlike other dental offices where the dentist is treating multiple patients at once, we only book one person at a time. So tell me more about like your decision to only book one patient at a time.
so this kind of comes back to working in DSO. When I worked at DSO, they had me working, 2 to 3 columns at once. So I was jumping from room to room all the time. I absolutely hated um, working on a patient, and then I was always thinking, like, who's next door? And they're waiting on me. So I need to get this done and then go over there. And so, one, I just never felt great about the dentistry I was doing
Mm-hmm.
because I felt like I was having to rush through things. Two, I never really got to develop any relationships with patients because I was just in and out of rooms. And, for me, that just wasn't when I grew up, I had a dentist that it was just him and his mom.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked in the dental office. And back then, I didn't really think anything of it. Um, but I would go in, and I was always just the only patient that was in his office.
Yeah.
And it didn't really occur to me now. I didn't really appreciate that model as I do now. But so it was kind of disheartening when I started working in corporate that you lose all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to create that same model that he was doing, but not just because I felt like I could provide better customer service and better dentistry, but also for my own sanity. I don't like. I tend to be more of an anxious individual, and I don't like having to work under pressure and having to rush through things.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, my only option was to do a practice, and I will only book 5 patients a day. That's it.
5 a day is your limit.
That is it. That is my limit.
So how long have you been open?
I've been open. Well, I was supposed to open in March, and then COVID hit,
Mm-hmm.
so I was open for one day, and then I shut everything down because I didn't have any patients.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, they're only allowing us to do elective procedures. I don't even have patients to get emergency, so I just shut my doors completely, and then I opened up again in July. So
Just over 6 months. 7 months.
6 months.
So you see 5 patients a day now. How does your clinical day, and even financially, like when you look and say, how am I coming out financially? How does that compare, like the 5 patients, just paint a picture of me, versus like in DSO, you're seeing 20, 30 patients a day. Like,
yep, so
how's that shaking out?
I don't have a hygienist.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, neither did I when I started. Yep.
Yeah, I'm doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, my overhead is ridiculously low. And I'm extreme. When I started, I'm basically practicing kind of like I did when I was in dental school.
Mm-hmm.
So I am doing a lot of stuff on my own. I have an assistant that comes in, but she only comes in 1 day a week.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so I schedule a lot of my new patient exams and cleanings all in 1 day. So it's just me here. Sometimes I'll have my wife come in, but for the most part, I'm doing all that on my own, and it's almost pure profit. I mean, so if when I was looking at my numbers, so on the days that I'm here by myself, my hourly expenses is only $25 an hour. I mean, so if I do 5 cleanings at $200 a pop, I'm still very profitable.
Yeah.
And because when I think back to when I was working,
and DSO, like there's DSOs now that are paying like $500-$600 a day, and you're seeing 30 patients. And you're seeing 5. If you do 5 prophies, if you do 5 like checkup, exam, X-ray, cleaning, you're making the daily pay of working at a DSO basically.
That's exactly right. And so the one way I kind of made this was, if worst case scenario, I never can talk anyone to doing a filling. If I just want to do cleanings from the next 20 years, I can still make a decent living doing that.
And if you decide, like, hey, I'm gonna do all the endo, I'm gonna do all the implants, if you decide to do all that stuff, the profit ratio is just gonna get even more in your favor. Like if you decided to,
It will. And if I do decide to start doing that stuff, I doubt that I will. But if I do, I'm definitely gonna have to have more staff.
More team, bigger team.
But the biggest I'm ever going to have my staff is be 2 additional employees. That's it. I don't ever want to go above that. Eventually, when I bring my assistant on full time, 3 days a week, then I'm probably going to be riding that boat for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one way to do it. It's not the only way to do it.
Absolutely.
But like I said, I don't want to.
And this is why I like talking to you. Like, it's not the only way to do it, but it's one way to do it. And in dental school, we don't really hear about this way. They just say, get out, go work in corporate dentistry for a while, like 6, 7 years, and then buy into an existing practice. I love
Yes.
this because this is like a story that maybe someone's going to see it and say, no way. But someone's going to watch this and go, that sounds good to me. I want to do something like that.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that it seems like dentistry, the business model is just it's different than most businesses. I mean, like most startup businesses are business owners that start out in the garage and build their business as they go, you
Yeah.
know. But dentistry is like no, you jump all in and you drop 500 to $1 million, and then you try to build up your production to
Yeah,
make
to
that
catch up to what you
to
spent.
catch up, you know. And so I just wanted to be ahead of my expenses, so I didn't have to be stressed out about it. I
I
mean,
love it.
so when COVID hit, I had no. I mean, I don't say I wasn't completely not stressed, but when COVID hit and I had to close my doors, it just didn't stress me out, and I could have rode that storm as long as I wanted because my wife was making enough money and I was making money at my associate job that so I was closed those it was like 3.5 months. I looked at how much I spent. I spent just like right at $9,000 over 3 months of the expenses with my doors completely closed,
Yeah.
you know? And so yeah, I had to pay out of pocket for it, but you know,
Yeah.
it didn't kill me. And
No,
like I
I
said, I
didn't.
could have kept going if we had to.
So
So that's
yeah, so I would switch gears a little bit. Your practice looks really nice. I want to talk about. I want to paint a picture a little bit more of this 50,000 number for people. So talk a little bit about the handiwork that you did yourself in order to save money. Like maybe things that other people would have contracted out. You have the skill set to be able to do some of these things yourself, which let you save a bunch of money. So let's talk a
right.
little bit about that, and also mention like something you said to me. You put more into remodeling and building out certain areas in the office versus other areas where the patients weren't going to see. You didn't.
Yes.
So talk about that.
So let me just clarify that it is a startup, but it was a empty space that uh, was occupied by a dentist prior.
How long ago?
2 years, so it was vacant for
For
two
two.
years.
Okay.
There was no equipment in it. Everything was out. It was just a shell.
Hmm.
And well, the funny thing is, so the dentist that was here before me, a car drove through the first operatory that was in the parking lot, and somehow the lady that was parked there, she hit the gas and drove right through the first operatory. And luckily, no one was in there at the time. But the dentist that was here, and I'm actually good friends with him now, so I went up there and talked to him. He just moved up the road,
Yeah.
and so the contractor that they hired on uh, was just dragging their feet. And so for like a year, it was taking him over a year to get everything fixed. And so he was
From
renting
the
space
crash, it took a
from the
year.
crash. So he wasn't seeing patients in this office. So he was seeing them. There was a periodontist here in town who was allowing him to see patients in one of his operatories. So finally, he was like, "Look, I gotta get out of here. It's taking way too long." So he left. And then finally, the landlord found someone to make the repairs, but it was just sitting vacant. A lot of people, I think a lot of dentists want something to be their own. They don't want to take over an old space, and so it just sat there. And it's Scottsdale because it's so saturated here.
Hmm.
They couldn't get it rented out, and so I didn't have to do the plumbing. I didn't have to. So that saved quite a bit of money in and of itself. And the renovations I did were not structural, so I didn't change any walls around. I essentially just veneered everything, and
Okay.
and just making those simple changes made a huge impact, in my opinion.
So talk about some of the stuff like new flooring, like what'd you put in?
So I only had to replace some of the flooring, but basically, like if you look at my waiting room, I spent all my money on the areas to save. I only spent money on the areas I knew the patients were going to be.
Hmm.
So the first thing was like I really want to make a big impression. So I really want to spend a lot more money on my waiting room so when patients come in, they're just kind of wowed by.
Hmm.
And then I spent the other money on fixing up the operatories. But like my doctor's office, I didn't do anything in the lab. I didn't do anything in. And I did everything. So the only thing I did not do was some of the electrical. Like I had them replace some of the old fluorescent office-looking lights, and I had them put in what do you call it, can lights.
Yep.
But for the waiting room, I did all the wainscoting, built that all from scratch. I did my own cabinetry, so I actually built a lot of my cabinets from scratch. If you look at, and then there's some things. Well, let's see. So if you look at the first operatory, the before picture, you'll see that on the left side there's cabinetry and a countertop there. And my operatories are really small. They're only like 9.5 feet by 9.5 feet.
How many ops
And
do you
so
have?
I have, well, technically I have 3 ops.
Okay.
I have 3 ops, but
Okay.
I'm only really using 1 op.
Yeah.
Now I have equipment in 2 ops, so if I do have overflow, then I bought another chair for the next op over. But so like the other operatory didn't have cabinets, so I took the cabinets off the wall in that one operatory, moved them into the other operatories so that I didn't have to buy cabinets. And then those cabinets were too long, so I sectioned them. I took the countertops and I went to a counter place, I had them section it, and then one section I turned it into a roller Alabama cart. So if you look at the finished operatory, you'll see a little roller cart right there. So I just put wheels on the bottom of the cabinet that was attached to the wall, had them cut down my countertops, and now my assistants can move that wherever they want to make room for themselves. So it's just stuff like that, where you just kind of have to be creative to save money. And then I did build some of the cabinets from scratch. I built some of my furniture in my waiting room from scratch. I built the tables. I built the coffee tables. Yeah, I mean, I really did.
Just did it all.
I just did it all, I did my website, I did my logo, but I had time to do it, and there was no rush. I negotiated a few months of rent-free. So I'm trying to think. Yeah, so that's kind of how it was done. I started accumulating my equipment before I even found this space. So I was starting to put equipment in my garage. I wasn't able to park in my garage because I just started, looking for some great deals.
Yeah, and your equipment looks nice. Like I'm looking at the pictures, like it's a nice looking chair, and you secondhand, right? I mean, I'm guessing like if you bought all new equipment, you're already going to be in a couple $100,000 if you're buying all new.
Yeah, everything was used, but really nice. I mean, like the chairs I got from a retired dentist who was working maybe like 2 days a week, and the chairs, they look brand new. Another dentist here in town, he was starting to place implants, so he wanted to get rid of his pano. So I took his pano from him for $2,900. It was a Plan Mecca, Pro Max 3, I think is what it was.
Yep.
Perfect working condition. I mean, just things like that. Now there are things that I did not buy that I didn't buy used. Like I bought my sensors, my digital sensors were brand new, obviously. My computers were new. Some of my small equipment, like Cavitrons and stuff like that, were new.
You got to be selective with it. That's a big thing that I tell people. Like, just don't buy everything used, but be selective. Find high quality used things that are in like new condition.
Yes.
But know when you got to buy something brand new also, Yeah, you don't want things breaking on you.
There is, and there's definitely a risk to buying used equipment, But I would also make the argument that even new equipment breaks down. How many times do you see people, I got this cone beam, and it's only been a year, and I'm paying someone, a technician, $1,000 to come in and fix it, And, dental chairs, they're pretty simple technology. There's not much to them. There's really not a lot of stuff to go wrong with them, But there's certainly, always a risk. Even like your mechanical room, with your compressors and suction and stuff like that. If that goes down, you're gonna be out. Now, I have backup systems for that as well in place. So if my mechanical room does go down, I can still run. So I bought these portable units from the military that they send to bases,
Mm-hmm.
and they do everything. They have suction and compressors, and so I just, if my mechanical room goes down, I can just roll this thing in, plug it in the wall, and I'm up and running.
Yep. Funny enough, so like my vacuum and compressor, my primary ones, brand new. I bought them brand new for my office,
Yeah.
but I found a Craigslist deal where like there was the dentist who was closing down. I'd already bought the new ones, but he's like, "Hey, I've got a perfectly good vacuum and compressor here. Just take them." So he gave
Yeah.
them to me for free, and I'm like, "Well, I'll keep them as a backup." So we hooked everything up and plumbed it. So if I need it as a backup, I just turn a knob and then I switch over. The new
Yeah.
ones, the new ones have gone down at least 3 or 4 times since I've been open, and I switch it on over to my free Craigslist used one, and it runs like a charm. So
And
the new
it runs like
ones
a charm.
are the ones that have given trouble, and the free Craigslist ones are the ones that I end up using in a pinch. So you never
Yeah.
know.
You never know. I mean, my autoclave broke down on me,
Hmm.
and it was losing pressure. It wasn't pressurizing, and I actually took the thing apart and figured out what was wrong with it. It was the pressure release valve. The metal was cracked on it, so
Hmm.
it wasn't sealing. And I just ordered the part on, it was some dental parts website for like $100, and then fixed it and was up and running.
Hmm.
Luckily I didn't have any patients that day.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, when new stuff is going to break down, what I would recommend is, if you do go that route, find a great mom and pop equipment guy in your area.
Hmm.
Not some not no one that works with one of the big companies, because you're going to pay an arm and a leg for it. I have
Yep.
a great guy here in my town. He's just a little small business, and that's what he specializes in, fixing equipment, and he does it probably for, I would say, a third of the price. Like if I ever have
Yeah, it's important to have a guy. You always got to have a guy like that.
always gotta have a guy. Yeah.
Well, so I know Scottsdale, like you've touched on a couple times, it's really saturated with dentists. How do you cope with that element of saturation in your practice?
Um, it's a great question. I mean, it's definitely it's going to be a slower process.
Hmm.
I mean, there's 150 dentists for people to choose in my area.
Hmm.
Um, I think you know because of how cheap I opened my practice, I don't have any loans. The bad thing about that is it does kind of make you don't have that sense of
There's
urgency.
yeah, because you're like,
Yeah,
hey, I can do profies all day and I'm fine.
I can do whatever I want. Yeah, I mean, I definitely need to be advertising more. I probably average new pay. See, like I haven't done a marketing ad since November,
Hmm.
but I need to get back on that. Usually I just make my own videos. Um, so yeah, how do I deal with it? I just try. I feel like I have a very unique model.
Hmm.
And a lot of my patients now it's just word of mouth.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, you just have to. I don't know how I don't really have a strategic
Hmm.
plan of dealing with it. I just kind of, I mean, I took the approach of hanging my shingle
Yeah. And
out,
things are going well so far.
and things are going well.
Nice.
I can say that when I do market, I always get a good response. My biggest marketing um, successes come through ground marketing.
Hmm.
Like literally just going into local businesses, introducing myself, and I almost always get new patients doing that
Yep.
every single time I do it. Nextdoor has been a big hit for my office, and I get more people from Nextdoor than I do from Facebook.
What's
So a lot of
next door? What's that? I haven't heard of that.
so it's just a local social media for your zip code.
Hmm.
So it's like Facebook, but it's only so like when you join, you can only join your specific zip
Zip
code.
code.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I went on there and I created two accounts. I created a personal account and I created a business account.
Hmm.
And if your business account, you have to pay to advertise. Well, so to work around that, I made a personal account and I just started talking about my business
On your
account
personal.
on my personal. And like I just introduced myself. Hey, I'm Darren. I just opened up a dental practice. I just want to introduce myself and just tell a little bit about my business. And then I started getting patients off that. The patients that I got off that started talking about me as well. And it just kind of spiraled, you know. And so, like, all the time I get patients coming in, hey, I saw you on Nextdoor. I saw so and so talking to you about Nextdoor. And so I just want to come in.
Nice.
Blah, blah,
I'm definitely going to check that out.
Yeah, check it out.
Nice.
Now, some people say they don't get good results off of it.
But if you're doing the personal account, it's free. So what's
free.
there's no loss at giving it a shot.
That's right. And you know, so I've had great success off of it. I've heard other dentists say they did not, but I think a lot of those I think, you know, I will say this. So I have tried doing the paid advertising on Nextdoor, and I didn't get anything on it.
Good to know.
And also with Facebook, I don't get a lot of patients from my paid Facebook ads, but I do get patients from my regular posts.
Your regular posts, okay.
So, and what I do, I mean, I don't know if you want to get into this or not, but like I'll just join a bunch of local
groups. Yeah, I recommend that to people all the time. Just be like in the community, and the community will.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Will be there for you.
You don't pay anything for it. You just post about it in the groups, and that's it.
Yep.
You know, and I usually get a pretty good return every time I do that. I just need to do it more for sure. You know.
Okay. Darren, I like to keep these right around 30 minutes, and we're just coming up over that. So as a last question, I want to circle back to something you said to me earlier when we were talking, and that if you could go back and do it again, you would definitely do it again because you loved the process. Just talk about loving the process, and then we'll wrap things up here.
You know, when I walk into my office, I look around and I see, you know, my work. And this is what I created. You know, I love seeing the success of my labor and the success of something I created from scratch, if that makes sense. And I've always loved doing this type of work. I love doing woodworking and stuff. And so, you know, when I'd just be in here all by myself, not having to answer to anyone, just putting my nose to the grindstone and just doing it, you know. And so I have a lot of pride in it. I have patients come in and they'll say, oh, wow, this is a really nice office, you know. And of course I'm going to brag and I say, well, guess what? I actually did all the modeling myself. And patients are usually impressed and they'll say, oh, well, if you can do this, I'm sure you're probably going to do good dental.
That's right.
You know? And I said, yeah, you know, I guess they kind of go hand in hand, you know. But yeah, so, you know, it was a lot of work, but I would also make the argument that when I see people doing these $1 million practices and I hear the headaches they have to go through with contractors, with their architects, with their equipment people, and I think, well, yeah, so mine was a little more labor intensive, but it wasn't stressful because it was all on me, if that makes sense.
Yep.
The only thing that was really stressful for me was staying on schedule. You know, like when I first walked in, I looked at it and I was like, oh, I can get this done in 3 months. You know, and then it ended up taking 6 months because there's always things you don't account.
Unexpected things. Yep.
Yeah, a lot of unexpected things. So that took a little longer. Yeah. So the way I did it is a little extreme. It's not for everyone to do it that way. I'm going to say that if you had to try to do my approach, but you didn't want to do the actual remodeling yourself, then I would say I probably could have gotten away with having someone do everything I did for probably around 25 or 30,000.
Yeah. So you're still keeping it under 100 for the grand total.
Yes, if you do it yourself, absolutely.
Yep.
I think so. And you know, the other thing too you have to consider is I don't recommend this because a lot of people are like, well, how much? What was your working capital? You know. So when
yeah, that was a question that was getting asked when I made a post that I was going to interview you. They were asking about working capital.
So I took out, and I wouldn't recommend doing this. So I took out a HELOC on my house. Okay. But I took it out as a precautionary.
Yeah.
Because I just didn't know. So
yeah.
I was like, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to take it out. and I haven't touched it.
Yeah, you don't have to touch it. I mean, and if you didn't want to do that, for people listening, you could also just get a line of credit from a bank,
Yeah,
and you don't have to
that's
use
kinda,
it. You don't have to use your line of credit. It's just
you don't have to
there,
use it, but it's there if
a safety
you
net.
know, as a safety net. Fortunately, now I would say this now if you know. One thing I have going for me is like I said, I have a pretty good associate job at another place. My wife makes really good money, so that helps out, but if you're someone who's single, you don't have income from a spouse, and you're going to do this, then you're probably going to need to save up some money for
Yeah. Keep your associate job on the side.
What about it?
I said in a case like that, they might want to keep their associate job on the
Yeah,
side a little longer.
absolutely. I wouldn't cut ties on that, but yeah. But like I said, as long as lean as I am, it's not a problem.
I love it.
Yeah. So go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Darren, thanks for sharing your time with the group today.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. Thanks for showing us your practice in Scottsdale, and I love to see, like you said, the fruits of your labor, the work that you put in, and I'm glad everything's going so well. I'm sure people will have some questions, so after I post this video, it's going to be on Facebook, it'll be on YouTube, and it'll be on my personal blog. If people have questions, I'm sure you'll be there to answer them as they have them. All right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Hey,
Take it easy.
It was fun. Okay.
Congrats. Bye.
Take care.